Hello everyone, my name's Chloe. I'm a pet portrait and wildlife artist, a regular contributor to the Leisure Painter magazine, and I simply love helping people to create wildlife art. Now, this that you can see in front of you here is Lenny. This is the final piece towards the end of the series, but we're going to be starting in this episode with part one, and we're going to be starting with his beautiful eyes. Now, I created this tutorial this summer. I was working from my motorhome in a campsite, so occasionally I share my views out of the window, which I think is what you're going to see first. But I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. Any comments or any questions, please do pop them in the comments section below, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
It's absolutely chucking it down here. Right, back to right, okay, the first thing that I would probably do, any eyes, any of my in-person people will tell you, I tell them to go super scary to start with. Let's really get some punchy eyes in. Put more and more layers on, you're naturally going to dull it down anyway. So what a lot of people will do is they will naturally go to the colour that they see, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it then doesn't leave you anywhere to go. So I like to start with, say, a red or a really vibrant orange. This one, so far I've only used the black and the white. I'm not sure that red's right, actually. Let's get a sort of a real reddy orange. Okay, I'm going to go for the 113. To just give a little bit of a light layer, but that tiny bit of red actually did work, so I'm going to go back to that. It's just to create some really lovely colour. It does feel a bit scary because it's red and it's not orange and so on, but we really want the sort of the depth that the red will give us. And then when you add, so that was the 310 by Castel Othello. You can use any red, and possibly a slightly more orangey red would be more helpful in this instance. I'm just a bit lacking in materials to hand. So this one's the 113, which is really quite a vibrant orange. That's more like the orange that you actually see in front of you. But mixing with the red, it's giving us quite a nice sort of rich colour there. And then I will do the same again the other side. So let's go back in with the red the other side. It's just a sort of a scary base layer. The other thing you can do is you can put fluorescent colours in eyes. Really help them go ping. So that was just a base layer of red again. And then this is the 113 from... I'll put all of this in the list, obviously. This is the 113 from the Faber Castel. And all I'm looking to do at this stage is just get some colour in there. We know that there's a little bit of orange just in there too. Okie dokie. So the next thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of light, because obviously you can see it's not just orange. You've got some quite bright yellows in there. I'm not going to go too bright just yet. I'm just popping in 215, which is just adding a little bit of light in there. I'm just trying to see if we've got a really sort of scary yellow to put in. Let's pep it up a bit. Okay, so this is just go for a really bright yellow, really bright yellows, really bright oranges. I mean, I do this with dog's eyes where we go really quite bright to start with, but then we temper it right back down. But actually these little eyes are really bright anyway. This is a 205, Stabilo Othello 205. I'm just playing around at the moment. I'm going to make this pupil a bit bigger. And I'm going to look at this pupil as well, make that a bit bigger. Okay. So that's just kind of getting some information down, really. Next thing I'm going to be doing is just using a little cotton bud. And I'm just trying to reuse ones so I don't keep getting fresh ones. The paper stemmed, but Even so, we don't want wastage. So just using this just to sort of blend in. So with pastels, the Pastelmat is like it has lots of different sort of it's lots of little sort of bobbles in it, and you've got to fill the bobbles in until you can create a nice smooth surface. So it's all well and good putting a load of pigment on like I have here, but it does need to be really pushed into the surface before you can then kind of create more details on top. Otherwise it's not going to look as realistic. Okay, so that's pushed that in. Okay, so the next thing that we're missing is some really, really punchy darks. Yes, we've got some nice vibrance going on in there. We've got no details at the moment to speak of. We've literally just punched some orange in where it needs to go in. The next thing I'm going to do is punch some darks in. So this is my Superpower pencil. It is the Cretacolor Black Chalk. Oops, there we go. Cretacolor Black Chalk 460-12. It's a beautiful pencil, really beautiful. It's very hard to sharpen, crumbles a bit. You don't really use it for details. I would use my Faber Castel for details. But when you really want to punch some black in, there's nothing like it really, apart from soft pastel. Soft pastels will work the same. And you might find it advantageous to start sort of using it where we've created some grid lines. So that we're going to, over here, there's some grid lines over here, and I know that the eyebrow kind of comes up like that. The other thing that I will do actually, now that we're sort of, I'll flip between the photograph that's got the grid on and also just an ordinary photograph, because you do have to bear in mind that the grid might not be perfect. So I'm just going to get the ordinary photograph up as well. Okay, just helps you understand it better. So I'm only using this black for my really, really darkest areas. So we've got a couple of like little strands that are a bit darker, and a couple there. This sort of comes out there. Okay, let's move on to the other eye. Oops. Okay, so we know that this is darker. This sort of slightly cross look comes from where this reflection is, and the sort of the darkness just above the eye. So let's get that really nice and black. Okay, we can see that that's really nice and dark. Got some more little bits in here that are a bit darker. And we know there's already, so I'm just, because it's only a little piece and it's only a small tutorial, I've got the black pencil in my hand, and I'm doing what I would do if I was just drawing it myself for pleasure. I thought once I've got a black in my hand, I look for other areas that are dark as well. And some of my other tutorials, we sort of really go intense in just one sort of area. But here I'm sort of looking at it a whole, because we're going to be hopefully completing this little chap fairly quickly. Okay, so he's starting to make a little bit of sense there. He's a bit cross-looking, isn't he? Right, okay. I think that's darker in there. Okay. So now I think it's time for me to get my black Faber Castell, which is what I used for the initial outline, and do all the bits that aren't quite as black. You know, the areas that you need perhaps a little bit more precision, but also where you know that you just you don't need them, so you need them black, but you don't need them so black. So there's a difference in tone there. And actually getting my blackest black out again, there's a really sort of dark area here. So we can see that the area above the eye here, it's black, but it's not very black. We'll just go over some of these grid lines. And I'm naturally, while I'm doing this, I am naturally working in the direction of the fur. You know, that's something you should always be doing. Feeling the painting, really getting a feel for it. So I was doing a bit of colouring in here. And it'll look a bit scrappy until we've actually started blending it in. And that's in here. Okay, and then again here. So we're looking, let's have a look closely at the fur so we know we're going in the right sort of direction. Don't go over where we've done darker bits, where we're sure of that. Don't, make sure you can still see the difference. And then we can see that the fur sort of heads in this direction. And then it kind of comes in here. Actually, that little grumpy mouth comes a bit higher. Looking at it like that. And then just very lightly going over in there. Starting to take shape a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to use my little cotton bud. I do use the word little a lot, by the way. I apologise for that, but I literally can't stop it. I've always done it. So there's a little this and a little that. Okay, so we're going to be filling in muzzle. So all I am doing is literally laying pigment down and pushing it into the surface. Okay, you can still see lots of the Pastelmat underneath there because we've not got any details. We've hardly got any layers in there at the moment. We're just blocking it in. So it's really enriching it by doing this. It's pushing it into the surface and it's creating a nice layer for us to be able to then start sort of working up on using our texturizing layers and detailed layers that come after this. Okay, let's start getting a little bit of white in just so it starts to make sense to us then. We know that this is super white. Okay, so I'm going to just go over grid lines now. So I think we've got enough information to not worry too much about grid lines. Let's start feeling the painting a little bit more now. Okay. So I'm just putting a base layer. If you have pan pastels, you can use pan pastels as a base layer too. Let's start just getting a bit of pigment down. Not worrying too much at this stage. We're just filling the tooth of the paper. Got to have coverage. I see a mistake a lot of people make, obviously when they're starting out in pastels and so on, is they're too frightened to do too many layers, because once they get layers that kind of look okay, they then stop. But the more layers you get, obviously you don't want too many layers, because if you have too many layers, you then can't get anything in over the top. So there's a bit of a balancing act with it. But you certainly do need enough layers, that's for sure. Right, so you've got some hairs here. I'm just going to fill, all I'm doing is using the white and the black at the moment. I'm not doing anything more interesting than that. It's just the 199, which is the black in the Faber Castel, and the white in the Faber Castel as well. It's not the blackest, it's not the whitest, but they're precision tools. And they're quite good for sort of pinpointing where you want to kind of get rid of those grid lines. While I've got it in my hand, I'm just sort of popping a bit extra in. We know there's a little dark bit there as well. Okay. Now actually this is an interesting area here because it's sort of a really big, well, it's the same as here really, but sort of a real mixture between the white hairs and the black hairs. But underneath here it's dark hairs, and then it's the lighter hairs that come in on top. It's a little bit lighter there, so I'll leave that. And then let's just pop a little bit of white in here. And I guess you'd really call this sort of blocking in, really. What a lot of people do in painting. So just blocking in so you know roughly what's what. And then let's get, again, because I've got the white in my hand, I'm just tinkering, really. Okay. Let's start to get a bit more dark. Again, I'm not using anything other than white and black at the moment. I will start to use some interesting colours in a bit. Okay. Right. Okay, let's give it a good scrub. And at this stage, I'm not worried that the black and the white are mixing and creating a grey. That's quite nice. I probably would avoid going into the areas that are the very, very darkest or the very lightest when you've got sort of the other colour actually on your cotton bud. But in the sort of like slightly greyer areas, feel free to let them sort of mix and do their own thing. And I might put a little bit of dark just at the top there, just because there's a bit of shading. Okay. Okay, so these eyes are now really sort of calling out at me. So we want to do something a little bit more special with them. So I'm going to start bringing some more colours in. So a brown is going to be a really useful colour to have. So this is the 177. You can use any brown. A reddy brown would be nice as well. Like a raw umber, burnt umber, bistray, something like that. Okay, and around the pupil as well. And you will see you will lose a little bit of that lovely bright orange, but that's okay. You don't need to do every single reflection. I think sometimes it looks better without. Those of you who have done Betsy on my YouTube channel will see that I've sort of missed out some of the reflections just for making it look a bit prettier. So I'm going to go back to this 113 that I've got. So I've put the brown in there now, but I just want it to mix with a little bit more orange. Okay. And then the other thing that you can use at this stage, if I can find one, is one of these little tools. They're called Shaper. And they're just, you know, rather than, so the cotton bud is great to start with because you can really sort of scratch it all in and really sort of get into the grooves of the paper. But as you start to do more of the painting and you start to work up the layers, you need a little bit more finesse. And this gives you it. Okay. So you started to get a little bit mucky in there now, but that's okay because it's adding some shading. but we need to sort of prioritise after this, getting this really nice and bright. Okay, so I'm going to start working in with the same yellow, the 215. Start getting that in. And then we're going to pop a bit of red back in. Just so we're sort of bringing it back to life. We've got those darker areas, but now that we're adding red to those darker areas, it's giving the sort of a nice sort of a rich red. And it's moved, a little bit of black has moved around, creating a bit of depth. And my yellow pencil here is not really playing ball. I can't really sharpen it very well, but I don't really care. Oh, yes I do. That wasn't supposed to happen. I was just supposed to add a tiny little bit. So a little bit of pigment from that has just has stayed back. But I'm going to use the 185 with Faber Castel. It's got a nice sort of yellow hint to it. Let's just play around. Let's go, obviously where we've been using other colours, we've just sort of dulled the pupil a bit. So let's get that nice and dark again. Okay, at this stage I'm literally just playing around with different oranges and yellows. There's no sort of right or wrong. The brighter the better. But equally you do need to have a bit of shade as well. Okay, so that's starting to take shape. And then I would probably press some of it in. And then I would just like to get some browns in, just particularly at the top part of this pupil, just to show that there's a little bit of shade towards the top half of the eye. It's a very small area that we're dealing with as well, so it's not going to be quite as easy as it would be if it was bigger. Let's just get that in. Might even drop the eye down a little bit. I think it probably could do with going like that. And then the sort of the really dark line in there. Okay, so let's show a bit of finesse now and do some finer details. So one thing I do like to do with eyes is add just a little bit of blue into the reflection. So I've picked up any old blue. It's an indigo. It's a 390 Stabilo. But you could go a bit brighter. You could choose purple. Just something that kind of looks like it's picking up the reflections in the area. So just at that top bit there, it's just sort of adding to the reflection a bit. And then if we add a tiny bit of grey to that, I'm literally just grabbing any grey that I've got there. That happens to be the 726, but you could use anything, literally anything for that tiny little bit of grey, followed by a tiny little bit of white, which you will then press in with this little shaper tool, and then it's mixing with what's in there and just creating that little reflection. And let's just brighten our little dot up, because that's quite a nice little feature to have. And then I do add a little bit of white into the eyes, and then let's couple of these are little dots in here. So let's get them in like that. It kind of comes to here. I start talking really softly. Let's also, I can see now as a tiny little bit of orange in there. That's where the orange of the eye still carries on. That gives it a nice shape. Might want to darken that up. I've got that was just any old orange that you use there. This is a great pencil to have though. The 187, it's a sort of a terracotta type colour, Faber Castel. So that just sort of brings that. And I'll be honest, I've sort of overdone it a little bit in that eye there. I got to the stage where I can't put too much more in. But, you know, add a tiny little bit of brown, that's the 177, just at the bottom. Right, so with that left eye, we've reached a stage where we really can't do too much more. I'm just going to add a couple of little bits of red. They're going to sort of sit there and mix with the browns. Create that sort of depth at the bottom. Okay, and that's just given it a little lift. And then I'm coming back over these whites that I created. Just coming back over them with a nice orange. And then I'd really like a really nice bright yellow. Well, look, the nib of this lovely yellow broke off. So let's not be wasteful and let's use it. It's a beautiful, almost fluorescent yellow. It's the 205 in the Stabilo Carbothello. I just want to use it to sort of just do a couple of little dots. Just where the light's hitting it the brightest. Okay. And the pupil just needs bringing out a little bit. Again, we need to just blacken it a little bit. Use your super punchy black as well. There, just to sort of enhance it. And there we go. Let's see. So we've put that yellow in, but I do want it to be a little bit more orangey. So that beautiful yellow can sit there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it in with an orange. So we're not losing all the yellow completely. But we're making it a little bit more orangey as well. And I have gone over the black bit there. So what I need to do is just make sure that the black line here is going over the eye, so the eye sits behind it really. And okay, and then just around here we've got some more little sort of dots and dashes. Not going to fuss too much about those at the moment because I think I'd quite like to get the second eye done. I don't know what this is in the corner of his eye. I think it's an eye bogey. We might want to leave that out, I think. And actually for here, again, like I've said before, this is a really nice sort of dark section. The rest is all black, but it's not as dark. This is a nice dark bit. So let's get that in. So can you see there the difference in blacks? And then in here, just gonna sort of looking at the texture of the hairs around there. And then I'm going to pick a grey, any grey, just to add a couple of little lighter, but not too light, hairs around here, just to show that we've got something that's not completely black. Okay. That's coming through there. So that was sort of fairly dark grey. So that one was the 726, and I really am picking up, because I'm living in a motorhome at the moment, I'm really picking up what I've got, and it's a great way of, you know, not fussing quite so much about, oh, you've got to have this, you know, you've got to have number 765 and 117 and all that sort of thing. Is just to give you a feel for how it can work. So now I'm just coming in on top of those greys, and I'm just doing a couple of little dotty bits. I've got a couple of little dotty bits in there, the light's hitting it a bit more there. So the light is hitting it there, but I don't want to draw those funny things unless they're important. Somebody can correct me if that's the case, but I think that's a bogey. So we will leave it out. And then we've got this much darker bit here, so I'm just darkening that again. Let's start, so let's just pinch that down a bit. Oh, that's an orange, don't want that. Black. So I'm now going over those greys with the black, because it is a sort of a darker area there, and I also just want a bit of texture because it is fur here. So I'm just kind of coming in here with this, and then let's have a look. Okay. Let's choose a slightly lighter grey. I'm picking the 704. It's a nice warm grey actually, and they've got quite a lot of warmth underneath some of these eyes. Might just sharpen it a bit. Okay, we have a nice sharp little grey here. So I'm just looking at some of the little hairs. They come up and over that little black bit just across there. So that will really help. And it's really quite warm in all this area. I mean, there's not an awful lot of space to play with. But let's get some of those in. Obviously, we've got to do some of the other bits and bobs around. So, okay. I think that is fine. I might just glaze those over. So I've kind of created those little marks, but they're just a little bit too bright for my liking. So I'm just going to use that grey that we used originally, which is the 726, and knock them back in. I might even knock some of these back in with just an ordinary black as well. Constantly looking at sort of tones and trying to assess, you know, how light or dark it needs to be. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get this area right tonally. So we know that there's lots of sort of light fur in here. So let's get that there. So the fur is slightly shorter here, so I'm using shorter strokes. And we've still got quite a lot of sort of base layer still to do here. It's just to sort of give it a feeling. There's a bit of, just using the black again, just in here, and where it's mixing in with the white that I've just put in, it's just sort of creating that grey colour. Bit of a grey colour going on here as well, and in here, and some of the ones here. Okay. I think we might then give it a bit of a scrub, but not too hard. Sort of a delicate scrub, really. Don't go over your really dark areas because they'll go all milky. But do it in areas where you know there's a mixing of the two. Just needs to sort of push into the surface. So I'm sort of creating that nice surface to work from, and then we will have to then come back in and just really sort of accentuate some of the lighter hairs that we need. Tiny little dots and dashes. That's all art is, really. Difference between light and dark and dots and dashes. Let's just give a little bit of a, as if the daylight is hitting there. I wonder if a bit of that is eyelash, actually. I don't know what this bit is here, but yeah. A couple of little... Okay. So that's starting to look realistic. Let's get some more orange there. Bit of yellow just in there, just to sort of give it that glow. And you know, if you've got sort of slightly more orangey colour, you know, feel free to sort of play around with that too. I'm quite happy with the sort of the colour of these eyes. Now they're not quite the same as what I've got, but they're still quite nice and nice and punchy. Okay. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is just this middle section, because I want to get this nice and super bright. It is mainly white with obviously a couple of like little loose random black hairs, but I'm just going to use a tiny little bit of sort of like a yellowy brown, just to sort of add a little bit of texture, particularly at the top, a little bit of extra colour, particularly at the top. Just add a little bit of colour into this top section. So this is the 180 from Faber Castel, because you can't just do a great big lump of white and expect it to look realistic. You have to have a bit of difference, a bit of something else in there, even if it's sort of predominantly white. Just do a couple little randomy bits just to sort of sit underneath. You're right there, Rosie. Okay, and we've got a couple of darker bits. So I will use my black there. Just a little couple of randoms. We know that there's a random there. Might do that towards the end though. A couple in there. And we'll just do just a couple of little bits here and there. So let's give that a scrub. Well, it's early stages, so you don't need to worry too much about, you know, sort of all mixing. And in fact, we want it to mix in. We want to sort of create a base layer on which we can add some nice little lighter hairs on top. Oh, I was about to put the black one in. Let's not do that. And you can see it's made it go sort of all sort of murky. But that's a great base layer for what we're then going to do on top. Okay, So you can use any white on top. I'm just going to play around with a little bit of a brighter pigment. So I've got a Chinese white here from Caran d'Ache. And I'm just going to, still, as I say, such early stages, I'm just going to zoom into the hair just so I can make sure that I'm still working in the right direction. And we want it to really stand out, and the Caran d'Ache range really does pack a lot of punch when it comes to pigments. Let's have a... Right, it's going to need another blend, and I've run out of cotton bud, so I'm going to stop videoing and get a fresh one. It's so beautiful. A deer just sauntered past, just completely sort of oblivious. So sweet. Right, okay, so we're back with a little scrubber. And again, once we start working it in, it becomes a bit milky and it loses a bit of its power. But we can keep working in on the top, but it's lighter than it was before. Quite satisfying, this bit. Okay, so we've got quite a nice sort of light base layer there. And then I'm tempted to come in with the sharpness of the Faber Castel, work over some of these dark bits here. Just really zoom in where you can and sort of check the direction of the fur, because that's incredibly important. Oops. And then you can plot in some of your different colours that you've got in here, just to add that little bit of warmth. And so this is not a full-length tutorial in the sense of being a full animal, but it gives you a really good idea of how to attack it. And we've even got a couple of little sort of nice warmy bits in here. So let's just pop this. This is just the 180. Just a bit of brown. Give it a bit of warmth. Work in between some of the hairs in there. And then let's smooth it in again a little bit. I'm not scrubbing it quite so much now. I'm just sort of smoothing it in. Okay. And then I'm going to use my punchy white. So let's just do some sort of top layer hairs to sort of go up and over all of the rest. Let me know it's really quite light here. Let's get that in there. And then at this stage I might use my finger just to sort of press in. That's totally personal preference. You can obviously wear gloves or use a little eyeshadow applicator, soffit tool, something like that. I go over lots of different materials throughout my tutorials. Okay, I think we just need to now go for a little bit. It's obviously here got a little bit of darker hairs just in here, just in here. Okay, and then while I've got the black in my hand, I'm just going to do, and let's go over those again. And we've got some distinct black hairs here, and again this adds to that sort of little expression that he's got going on. So just a few of those there. Okay, so let's start on the other eye. Okay, so just as we did before, going to be adding some little brown bits just at the bottom here, particularly. Sort of add that depth in there. A little bit of depth in there, and a little bit around here. Either side there. Because it's so delicate, I will use my shaper inside this area, which again is not sort of scrubbing it around. It's keeping it sort of where it is, just gently blending with its neighbours, but okay. So that's that. So the I might just do a little bit in that top corner as well, because that's naturally going to have a little bit more shade. Okay. But then we're losing a little bit of the vibrancy, so let's whack some red back in. So we've sort of created that depth, but now we want it to be just a little bit, with a little bit more red, a little bit more punch. I can't help myself but add a little bit to the other eye while I'm there. Just blend that in a bit. So okay, so let's blend some of that red in. So I think it comes to about there. I'm just going to neaten up that line there. It wasn't very neat of me. And then I'm coming in with the 186, which again is that beautiful orange, and I'm going again over the top of that brown and the red that we popped in there. Particularly laying a bit more here because there's a bit more light in here. And then I'm going to use that tiny little stump of yellow that we had. And let's really sort of pop some in like that. Again, it looks pretty scary. That's okay. I'm just going to make this pupil bleed out a little bit, just so it softens the pupil a bit. That's better. Okay. And I'm going to use, just cleaning it off thoroughly, this shaper, just to sort of press that beautiful yellow in. Careful that you don't pick up sort of other colours too much. And then we can just bleed that out a little bit in there. Okay, I think time to go back in with a really bright orange, so the 113. So remember you're going over the top of those yellows, so they really get, it's really going to be a bright orange, whereas if you'd just done the bright orange to start with, it wouldn't have been quite as vibrant. Burnt sienna would be quite a good one to have in here. I think we did that on the other side. Not burnt sienna, the terracotta, which is a slightly sort of a duller bright orange. Just, you know, it's a nice orange. It's a light sort of orange, but it's not quite as quite as bright as the oranges that we've been using. Say for instance like this, which is the 109. That just elevates it again a little bit. Okay. So I'm just going to come back in with the 177, which is that nice brown. Actually, no, I'm going to go for the 283 burnt sienna. Beautiful colour. It works really well with the 177, the brown. I use the pair of them a lot. I just want to get sort of a couple of the little darker bits in without making them sort of black. So the bits that are under the eye are generally always going to be sort of a bit more in shadow. Okay. And let's get some, so kind of put it in, I need to sort of take it out again a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to do the same little trick that we did before with the reflection. So obviously you've got that white dot. I just like to sort of create a, so that's just a little grey that's gone on the 230. Just going to pop a bit of blue in, any old blue. Just makes it look like there's some blue in the atmosphere. I quite liked what we had here actually. It was a slightly darker blue, but I'm just going to add a bit more in there. Add a bit of that blue and go back in with the darker blue that we had, which was the 390. So much more of a sort of a dark navy blue in over the top. Once you've done that, you'll find that you've lost your little dots a bit, and we do want that to look quite bright because it will add to the 3D. So just using my Caran d'Ache white again for that. And while I've got the white in my hand, I'm just going to pop a couple of little light bits in, just to sort of show a little bit of difference in there. Okay. And then I'm going to, so now that I've got that in there, I'm going to grab a yellow and colour those light bits in with the yellow. So you create the colour that you want to be with the white initially to really sort of bring it to the surface. And then you kind of colour it in with whatever colour it is that you think you want in there. And I'm going to pop a little bit more red in. I'm literally just playing at this stage. Some little red around here. Okay, and you can just... Okay, so now I might just Nope, I think that's all right. You can fiddle too much sometimes, can't you? So the above the eye just needs to be a bit darker to add that expression. And then we just got some here, haven't we? Let's go across there. So let's just use a little bit of a grey. So this is the 230 by Faber Castel. But as I say, for this particular exercise, any grey will do. It is worth noting the difference between warm greys and cold greys. You know, cold greys have a lot of blue in. A warm grey is obviously sort of warm and a bit more brown. And you can see that we kind of need to, let's put a couple little touches in there where the water is sort of pools underneath the eye. And I think that probably comes... Let's get our black again, just our ordinary black, and then recreate sort of like another line. You've got sort of several sort of lines. You've got the dark of the under eye there, and then you've got an area, really sort of bright area, and then you've got another dark little line there, and you just got a couple of little dots and dashes here. They do add up. For the really light areas like here, can do with getting that a bit sharper, but yeah, you can just dot a couple of like really super punchy lights in there, which will make a difference. I might just neaten that up a bit with my black. Okay, and then this is just lightening it a little bit with just a light grey, just to show the difference between the areas that are at their blackest and darkest compared to areas that aren't quite so dark. And there's a little touch in there, don't know what that is. Okay. So the eyes are really starting to sort of look quite lively now, which is great. The other thing I might do, just to sort of add a bit of difference in the fur here, even though it does look really quite light, is just use my, is 230 grey from Faber Castel. Just use it to sort of do a couple of little gaps, a couple of the little in-betweeny bits. Because white's never really white, is it? It's all different sort of shades, different colours. Okay, and then once you've done that, you can then kind of go in and do some more of your sort of more determined hairs on top. And then just gone over that little whisper there. Just little, tiny little touches. Okay. Just going to very gently push this back a little bit. There was just an area just here that I noticed that not quite as light and bright as I had it. Just knocks it back a bit. And again, we're not where we want to be. We've got all of this sort of area still to do. I just want to add a couple more little bits of yellow in here. And again, I'm using the little... It's great actually not wasting anything. Just in there so that it kind of comes out. And then I'm going to use an orange just to sort of soften it in a little bit. And actually at the bottom of the eye there, that needs to be a bit darker because it's having the effect of making the eyeball bulge a little bit. So I'm going to go for my 177, which is a nice sort of dark brown there. And then we've got a bit of darkness just underneath here. Okay, let's use our little shaper again. Okay, so now I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the bits either side of the nose. So we've already done some sort of basic work there, but I'm just going to give it a glazing over with the black, just because I need to get some coverage. We need to get something of a base in there before we can do much more. So let's just get that in there. Even though I know it's those areas are going to be lighter, let's then smooth it over with a grey of some sort, just to sort of create a nice mid-range colour really for these bits here. So this is a 230 by Faber Castel. I'm going to go up and over the little white bit, up and over this section in here. Okay. Okay, starting to take shape. So I seem to have run out of paper stumps, cotton buds, sorry. So I thought, well, I probably haven't run out, I just can't find them. So I thought I'd use my little, I've got a paper stump here. So I'm just going to press. It's just quite a nice little tool to have. It's sort of in between the shaper and the cotton bud, really. It's sort of really the phase between the two. I would always use the cotton bud first on initial layers, and it just has the effect of sort of blending things together a little bit while still sort of leaving everything in place. Okay, so I would call that quite a nice sort of base layer. All right, so we're now going to get some super sharp pencils and start putting the top layers on.